welcome to Season 2, Episode 33 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in Impact Wrestling history with match number 18 on our list, which is the finals of the Super X Cup tournament between AJ Styles and Samoa Joe from the TNA Sacrifice 2005 event held on August 14th of 2005. So yes, we have back-to-back matches on this countdown that are finals of the Super X Cup tournament. So if you watched yesterday's video, you know that the Super X Cup was established in 2003. Throughout 2004, TNA, did various, incarnations of it. They did the America's X Cups and things of that nature. They brought it back to its original, single wrestler tournament format in 2005. Samoa Joe had just debuted in the X Division a couple of months prior. I'd mentioned before this was a very, very exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan. Joe, had dominated Ring of Honor, had, lost the world title in that promotion about 6 months prior to his TNA debut, and kind of, felt a little lost in Ring of Honor per se. He was still getting, big time dream matches, but, like the kind of Kobashi match and everything like that. But, outside of those big kind of dream matches, he had, didn't really have too much to do. So him coming into TNA, it was what he needed for his career, and it was also a huge, huge boost of momentum that TNA needed. This match happened in a very weird time for TNA, where it was in between them losing their deal for Impact on Fox Sports Network before they shifted to Spike TV. So you had this weird few months, during this Super X Cup tournament where TNA was, online only. So you'd have to watch Impact online, which, nowadays doesn't really seem like too much of a problem to be able to do. We're used to watching, everything online and streaming it. But at the time, again, it was, it was still kind of early in that era of doing things like that. So, I not a lot of people I knew watched TNA at the time. It kind of seemed to fall out of everybody's radar. So you had the Sacrifice pay-per-view, which was top to bottom and excellent pay-per-view. There's a great ECW style main event here. Jerry Lynn and Sean Waltman tear the house down, turning back the clock and going to their feud, that they had in Global 15 years prior. So it's a really fun show overall. Christopher Daniels was the X Division champion at this point. With the Super X Cup, it was established that the winner of the tournament would get a shot at his title. So this is kind of how the whole, Joe, Styles, Daniels kind of three-way feud that would lead to the famous match at Unbreakable kind of started. AJ and Daniels had been feuding on and off again, but this is what kind of interjected Joe into the mix and got, that threesome together. So like I said, Joe had been steamrolling the X Division. Here, though, in the finals of the tournament, he has AJ Styles, arguably the most famous X Division wrestler, and someone that is not intimidated by Joe and is going to stand up to Joe. And that's, what they established right off the hop. AJ shows no intimidation. He goes to work on Joe with strikes. He hits a big body slam. But then again, they show that, AJ might be tough. He might not be scared. He might bring the fight. But, Joe is that juggernaut. So Joe floors him with just a single jab, and in just one of my all-time favorite bumps, Joe hits a running boot that sends AJ Styles through the bottom and middle rope onto his head, onto the floor. I can't do it justice with words. It is absolutely disgusting, and AJ is just an absolute bump machine, and it's so good. But because it's the X Division, right, Joe, proceeds to follow that up with a huge, tope suicida that sends AJ, falling backwards into the announce table. Not to be outdone, though, AJ counters a whip into the guardrails, jumps over it, does a springboard forearm off of it, which was one of his signatures. This match is so great. One thing that I love that, is a kind of a trademark AJ Styles spot is, he hits, the big drop kick when he sends his opponent off the ropes, hits the drop kick. Best standing drop kick in wrestling history, in my opinion, by far. AJ is so good at delivering that. But he's also very good at countering when he'd go for that drop kick and somebody would hang onto the ropes or whatever. He would do like a standing backflip, but he always made it look so good that it wasn't, pre-rehearsed that he was going to hit this backflip, but it would look like he was going up for the drop kick and then, go backward onto his feet. So, they do a spot where AJ goes for that drop kick, Joe hangs onto the ropes, he hits that backflip. They would call that back a little bit later on in another spot that I loved, where they'd kind of do the same thing, where AJ would do the drop down, Joe would run over him, but instead of going all the way off the ropes, which allowed AJ to prep for that dropkick before, Joe does a really quick turnaround and comes back at a charge, and AJ actually connects with the dropkick that time. And I thought this was so smart. It's not something that I've really seen done too much in wrestling. You're used to that, you know, running off the ropes all the way back. But Joe to pivot kind of on a dime like that and come back, it was really good and really legitimate. Like, he didn't want to make, you know, a mistake that almost cost him earlier. They do just some really cool takes on their normal stuff. So the ST Joe is, you know, one of Joe's big moves. He normally does it out of the corner. Well, he does it out of the middle rope, you know, the middle of the ropes at this point. AJ tries to clothesline him over, can't get him, takes a big charge and eats that ST Joe, and of course bumps huge off of it. So another thing that I really liked here, although they don't mention the promotions by name, they talk about these guys' history on commentary. And that's something that, you know, at the time, WWE really wasn't doing a lot in acknowledging, you know, outside promotions and guys' history there. So, you know, they mentioned that these guys are, you know, have competed twice before, and they're both 1-1. You know, Samoa Joe won a Ring of Honor match at the War of the Wire show in late 2003. And AJ Styles beat Samoa Joe at All-Star Weekend Night 1 in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in 2005. So, you know, they were 1-1 coming into this match, and I like that was referenced. And it also shows that, you know, AJ Styles has what it takes to defeat Joe, when I think a lot of people were expecting, you know, Joe just to steamroll him really and continue his path of destruction. Again, takes on signature spots. Samoa Joe hits powerbomb. Normally, he's turning this into a Boston Crab or an STF or whatever the case may be. So he turns the powerbomb off the kick out into this just grotesque, like high angle Boston Crab. But again, AJ showing that his fight, you know, is still there. He basically does like a push up out of it, and that causes Joe to, you know, lie over him and turn it into an STF. So again, something we see out of Joe, but done in a little bit of a different way. Joe cuts AJ's legs out with just a disgusting leg sweep at one point. They call it back later in the match where AJ jumps over and hits the Pele, which looked great. And then they call back the Pele where Joe hits like a Kiwi roll, like a rolling cradle all around the mat. AJ instinctively goes for the Pele again, but he's so dizzy, he does it like, you know, 10 feet away from where Joe's standing. And again, it's one of those things that kind of seems a little hokey, like almost a comedy match spot, but it worked in the context of the match, and I loved it so much. Because it's Joe and AJ, these guys have just amazing chemistry. I honestly believe that they are both each other's best opponent of all time. You know, things get a little chippy down the stretch. It gets really stiff. It gets, you know, like these two guys are pretty heated at each other. And that's escalated when AJ Styles hits a Gamagiri right to Samoa Joe's face. It was brutal. AJ, in an incredible show of strength, gets Joe up for the rack bomb, right? The torture rack. He would turn into the spinning power bomb. Again, another one of his signature spots. The ref gets bumped when Joe gets swung around, and that leads into, you know, a little bit of a disappointing, convoluted, overbooked finish, where Daniels, who was on commentary for this match, he runs in, takes AJ out with an STO, and goes to hit Joe with the X Division title, but Joe kind of stops him dead in his tracks, sees that this is about to happen. You know, AJ, he ends up taking out Daniels, and that gives Joe the opportunity to hit AJ with the Muscle Buster, lock on the Coquina Clutch, the choke, and cause AJ to submit. This gave Joe the Super X Cup win. This left a disputed finish though, where, you know, had Daniels not interfered, what would have happened? And it basically came around, okay, Daniels, you know, you tried to ruin the finals of this tournament because essentially you didn't want to face either of them. Now you'll face both of them at Unbreakable. This match is so great. At this point in TNA history, it was, you know, maybe one, you know, up there for the best matches the company had done. It just felt like a complete breath of fresh air. These guys would later go on to top themselves, but this match is great. You take away, you know, the overbooked finish and you put a clean finish on here, and it would be even higher on this list. But as it stands, you know, it worked for what it needed to. The match was incredibly satisfying. Sure, the finish, you know, wasn't the best, but it gave us, you know, even more satisfaction later on. You can watch this match, of course, on Impact Plus. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50. Top 50.